Stefan Adika, and this is Adika Live. Grab your coffee, fix your wigs, get your life together, because today, who do we have? The original, the one and only, Mr. George Chakiris, the original from West Side Story. He's in the house. He's going to share some memoirs about his new book called My West Side Story. That's all coming up next on Coffee Talk with Adika Live. Don't change that channel.
It's Coffee Talk with Adika. Nothing rhymes with that but chicken tikka. We name drop here with Stefan and all his friends.
This is take 3. I just had maybe it was me. I was making the internet bad that day because I just want to talk to you forever. So there.
That's fun. It's fun.
Here it is. Well, first of all, everybody that's watching out there in YouTube, I have wonderful George Chakiris and his book right here, West Side Story. There it is, My West Side Story, a memoir out now, everybody. And we're going to talk to George about this and whatever he wants to talk. He is the guest and the honor. George, you had the honor to dance with her. You're in the scene over there. It's Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. You're in the background singing. But there's a great story, and I know you said so many times, but I want to share with our audience about there was on the show, you could say better with a kiss. It was regarding a kiss.
Okay. That was on, I was working on There's No Business Like Show Business. And of course, she was in that. One day at the end of rehearsal, about 5 o'clock or so, there was a party, a casual kind of party for everyone. So the kids were included too. And so I got to be there quietly. And I had a good friend of mine who was also a dancer. Her name was Drusilla Davis. So we were there with, I guess, a glass of wine or something. And Marilyn came in. I'm saying Marilyn like it's too familiar, right?
Yeah.
Miss Monroe came in.
I love it.
with a couple of friends. And she came in quietly. She always came. There are other times, and she always came in quietly. She didn't draw attention to herself. She didn't need to, I suppose, but anyway, she didn't. So she was standing within hearing distance with her friends, and Drusilla, my friend Drusilla, she said, "Why don't I ask her to give you a kiss on the cheek?" And I said, "No." And Drusilla just went over and did it anyway. And she said, "Would you give that boy a kiss on the cheek?" And she pointed in my direction, and Marilyn Monroe looked in my direction, very sweet, and said, "But I don't know him." I think that says volumes about her.
I think so too.
I don't know him. Yeah,
I don't know him.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful. I love that story. I've heard you say it, and I have to hear it over and over.
Yeah.
So now, how many films did you do with Marilyn? Was it?
Well, I was an extra for a day on How to Marry a Millionaire, and I was in General for a Block, that one, and in No Business Like Show Business. I was just for one part of the day. She the choreographer for that movie was a man named Robert Alton, who was an incredible choreographer, theater, everything. He had an extraordinary background. And I think he was the only choreographer of his day who got separate screen credit on whenever he was involved in a film. So he was doing all the numbers in that film. And then there was the Heat Wave number. And she wanted Jack Cole. And what Bob Alton did, he was such a gracious guy. The kids loved working for him. He always knew everybody's name. He was fun. He was hard work, but everybody loved working for him because the work was so great and he was so great. So, but when he understood that Marilyn wanted Jack Cole, what he did was he created a number for her. And he first went to one afternoon during a break, he went to one of the screening rooms on Fox with his people who worked with him to see a number in a film that she had done that was called River of No Return. And there's a number in that staged by Jack Cole for her. And I think it's called I'm Going to File My Claim. And Jack Cole was really double entendre stuff. It was funny. And he always had extra things for the girls to say, for the stars to say, and very funny, very sexy, but funny. It was funny. One of the good ones, by the way, if I'm making this too long, but in
no, I love it. I have all the time in the world for you.
But in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Jane Russell does a number called Ain't There Anyone Here for Love? And it's Jane Russell with all these athletes, gymnasts, doing in briefs, doing stuff, And at one point she picks up a couple of a tennis racket and she says, anyone here for doubles? And then she has another one, doesn't anyone want to play? And at the very end of that film, I remember that the guys crouched down because she was, what happened was, it was very end of the number, and she crouches down and the guys jump over her into the pool. Well, one guy jumped a little too low and pushed her into the pool. And they kept it in. That's how the number now ends. But it wasn't staged. But I mean, but again, so what Robert Alton created a heat wave number for Marilyn, and in doing so, he had his female assistant learn what Marilyn would do, and he hired 4 guys to be in the back. And I was one of the guys chosen for this number that he was created for Marilyn. And so after about 4 weeks, it was ready to show her the number, and she came in by herself, very quietly, very politely, very nicely, and sat down. I couldn't hear what they were saying because they were by the mirrors, but nice to meet you, and that kind of stuff. And then we did the number for her, and she thanked everybody very quietly and left. And Jack Cole did the number. So I about to say she got her way, but and she did. But she was right. Bob Alton was so great, but Jack Cole's work was a bit different, and really was great for her, for any woman really, for any female star. Jack Cole did the numbers for Rita Hayworth and Gilda. So yeah, great stuff, incredible stuff. Anyway, so, and I've always thought to myself, she knew that was right, and I think of the word instinct, and that she was strong enough and I maybe even determined enough to get it done the way she felt was right for her, and she was right. That's the part of that story that I think is matters, because she had the courage to pay. This is me thinking. She had the courage to listen to her instincts, and she was right.
She was,
she was. I always think of Jerome Robbins, of course, as being a perfectionist, because he was, but I think she was too. She did. She worked hard. She took, even her last film, The Misfits, which that she worked, she was going through a lot of stuff, and she worked hard on that one too. And you could see, wow. One of the things I thought, what would have been like for Marilyn Monroe when she reached 40, when she reached 50, how was she going to deal with getting older? Because that's not what her career was about.
Everybody out there watching, I'm holding the book like it's my Bible right now, because it really is a fantastic read. It should be longer. And George still looks the same, as you could see here. This outfit here, do you still have the wristband, the Bernardo wristband?
I have the wristband. Don't have the shirt or the t-shirt, none of that, but I have the wristband. I still have the wristband.
You still have it, huh? They let you take it? They gave it to you, or did you just go?
Well, because we all bought our own wristbands. One of the sharks, his name was Andre Taylor, Tayir. He came to rehearsal one day with a wristband, and the sharks, we all said, "Oh my God, and we should all get one." So we all individually went out and bought our wristbands, and then because there was this competition between the Jets and the Sharks all the time in the theater production as well, and playful, funny but creative stuff that helped the atmosphere of the film. And so the way we decided we were going to show the wristbands to the Jets, we were rehearsing. I guess we're still rehearsing the dance at the gym, the mambo. And when it came to the part where the sharks go, da, 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 that's when we put those wristbands up at the same time, and wow, we felt so great doing it, and I think the Jets never had came back with anything to equal it. So, but the costume designer on the film, I should oh God, I can't forget her name. She's so amazing. But they loved it, and Bob Wise and Jerry loved the wristbands. Of course, we wore them in the film too. You know.
Right now, we're back here, kids, with my West Side Story, a memoir by George Chakiris. Right here, his stories. If you want to get this, it's right here. You could order it. Links will be in our description down below. But we got to ask George right now. A lot of people wanted to be in this. And before the play, before the movie, you were in the London production and you played Riff.
Yeah.
Right there, which people right now, they probably know, or the ones that don't know. Riff, is this true? Because nobody could picture you as Riff because Bernardo, the dark hair. Yeah. Riff shouldn't have dark hair. Riff should look like, like Russ, like Hamlin, So how was you playing Riff? I want to know about getting the start, like just the West Side Story. How did you get to get introduced to it? That's what I want.
Well, again, I'd been working as a chorus dancer in the different movie musicals, and into the 50s or like 56 or 55, there wasn't as much work for dancers in Hollywood, and so I had friends who had already made the move to New York. And so I started to think, and I thought, and I did, I thought I should go to New York. So I bought a one-way ticket to New York, and I had some friends who had already made the move, and they let me stay on the counter in their living room. And so when I got to New York, these two girls, one of them worked for Roger Stevens, who was a huge producer. So these girls knew everything was going on in New York. And what was going on at that time was they were starting to audition people because West Side Story was just coming up to its first year anniversary. So it opened in 57, so this was 1958, give or take around September, something like that. So it's coming up to its first year anniversary. And they were already considering, because some kids were going to leave, replacements for that company. And they were auditioning people because they were forming a London company as well. So these girls, my friends, knew all of this. And they said I should try to audition if I can. And West Side was playing at the Winter Garden Theater. So they told me to go to the Winter Garden Theater, to the stage door, and they knew who I should ask for. They told me to ask for Ruth Mitchell. She was the stage manager, and she later became Hal Prince's associate producer. But anyway, so I do what I was told. I went to the Winter Garden Theater, and the first person I saw before I saw anybody else was a guy called Howard Jeffrey. And I didn't know Howard well, but Howard had been a star pupil at the American School of Dance in Los Angeles. He made the move to New York and became a principal dancer with the ballet theater. And after that, and he was now assisting Jerry and had been assisting Jerry Robbins on West Side Story. So the first person I see is Howard. It's like, it's somebody I know, So it's like, hello, how, it was nice. It was a great introduction. I was lucky, And then he introduced me to Ruth Mitchell, and she was also very nice. And she said, I think you should read for Bernardo. And she gave me a script and to look at. And she set up a time for me to audition for Jerome Robbins. And so after about 2 weeks or something like that, he was rehearsing Ballets USA at the Alvin Theater. I think the Alvin Theater has a different name now, at the Alvin Theater. And during his lunch, I read for him during his lunch break. And I was the only person auditioning that day. I don't know why, but anyway, that's the way it was. So I met Jerry for the first time. And I remember he had the most beautiful, gracious smile. He's just and he was so nice. And so anyway, so I read Bernardo, and then he asked me to look at the role of Riff. And so I was able to take 20 minutes or so, go back into the wings and look at the role of Riff and come back. And then I read Riff. And in the theater version, Riff sings cool.
Wow.
Yeah. In the well, at least in our version of West Side Story,
yeah.
that it's sung by Tucker Smith, who plays Ice. And it's such a great number. And Tucker is so fantastic. I mean, he's wow. So anyway, again, Riff sings cool in the theater version. So they gave me the sheet music for Cool and asked me to look at it, work on it, and so on, and come back and audition again. So I did that, and I guess that I always think there was a third audition, but certainly there were two. And then after I did that, there was a waiting period, so to speak, and on my birthday, September 16, I remember this, and I can remember, I'm good at these dates, September 16, 1958, Ruth Mitchell called me and told me I had the role of Riff in the London Company of West Side Story. And that same day, I found out that I had 7 checks from my California unemployment, $35 each.
Wow.
So it was a great birthday.
Wow.
So that's how I started with West Side, and that was how I first started working with Jerry, rehearsing for the London Company. And I do remember the very first day of rehearsal, I thought it was all going so fast. I thought I'll never be able to learn this, and I was really worried.
Yeah. A lot of pressure on you.
Yeah, and Jerry started the whole thing before rehearsal ever started. He called everybody into a semicircle around him, and he said, "We have 3 weeks to learn this." And he said a little bit more, and he said, "I want the Sharks to stay over there, and I want the Jets to stay over there." He said he didn't want us to socialize during breaks, during a lunch. At the end of the day, no socializing between you guys. And that was the directorial thing, and it was important because it sets the tone even before rehearsal started of the danger and the competitive thing between these two gangs.
Yeah.
So it was a great piece of direction, and we all stuck to it, and it really worked. It helped to create the tension that, of course, is important. And there was a book out at that time called the Shook Up Generation. It was about juvenile delinquents, and Jerry told us, the guys, all to get a copy of that book and read it to sort of learn something in that way. So we did. I don't remember what the book said, but I do remember I got. But my point, Jerry came from the actor studio kind of thinking, and that is, characters and their characters' backgrounds and all of that. And so that's basically, and that's even his choreography is based absolutely on character and what characters feel in the course of that number. So it's all based on character and feelings, and that's one of the beauties of Jerry's work and why he was so incredible. But just working on this, wow.
Wow. So when you had your first trial, so all eyes were on you. There wasn't a lot of people. It's just you and Jerry, basically, huh? When you tried out for the role the first time.
Yeah. For the audition, it was just everybody was on a lunch break. So that's when I read for Jerry. It was during his lunch break.
So it's like almost meant like he has full attention. He wasn't distracted.
Well, yeah, because I was the only guy there. I guess I got his full attention for that time. I never thought of that before. Yes, yeah, and I had no idea who he was when I met him. I didn't know anything about him. But of course, over time, I've learned a lot. And he has a reputation for being difficult and all that kind of stuff. But that was not my experience with him at all.
So I'm doing this because I love the guy. His book is great, and I want you to love George as much as I love George. But right here, My West Side Story, a memoir, George Chakiris. It's just stories here. He's got great pictures in here. And there's much more than only West Side Story. But right now we're recapping this. And set the record straight for people who are listening and watching this. Is this true? Because you can't believe everything you read. Yeah. Elvis Presley wanted to be in it. So did Marlon Brando and Warren Beatty. Are these true stories, or are they just tales?
Well, I don't really know, but I remember when we were still doing the play in London, people were started sending in clippings from Los Angeles and New York newspapers, and they put them up on the bulletin board. And I remember one of the ones that we saw that they were considering for the movie Elvis Presley and Elizabeth Taylor. And that made sense to us because they're huge stars. Of course, why wouldn't they? But it also made us not think that we could ever be involved. But those are the only. And I don't know. I only read that in a newspaper, and who knows where they get their information. But it makes sense that they would think of people like that.
Yeah. I ask you because, I want to send the Yenta column straight. I want to get everybody. I want to get the real story because I got you here. You're the guy you're in both. You were Riff on the London production, and then the Bernardo, and that's a whole nother story because here you are. You used to be in Riff. Now it's in your DNA. I'm Riff. This is who I am, and I own this role. How was it for you to do the switch and all that? But when you auditioned for the movie, I guess let's go. You got the London production, so now they're casting for the movie. They're making this a movie.
Right.
Did you think, oh, I got a shot. I'm going to be in this movie for sure, or you weren't sure?
No, never even dreamed that they would get a shot at all. In fact, we thought the opposite probably.
Really?
But one day, 5 of us in the London production got letters from United Artists asking us to do tests, screen tests. And my letter asked me to do a scene as Riff and a scene as Bernardo. And Ken Leroy, who was playing Bernardo in London, and he's the original Bernardo, and he was fantastic, also tested, and the other 3 tested for the roles they were playing. So one day, 5 of us were driven out to Elstree Studios outside of London for our tests. And that was an incredible experience because for each of us, when it was my time, for example, to do my test, the camera and the light, it was focused on. It was just so extraordinary to be doing it. First of all,
really,
but it was kind of thrilling to do it. So I did a scene as Riff, and I did a scene as Bernardo, and in my scene as Bernardo, Ken let me use his Bernardo costume for that test. That part, yeah. So anyway, so the day is over. We finished our tests, and we're driven back into the city to do the show that night. And we were all on such a high. It was had been such an incredible day. Okay, so then we're back in the theater doing the show every night. Thank God, loved doing the show, and the days start to go by, the weeks start to go by. We pass each other in the hallway. Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? I haven't. None of us had heard anything. So after about 4 or 5 weeks, we thought, well, that's that, And I think after about week 6, give or take, there was a call at the stage door for me from Jerry. And so I went to the stage door, and he said, I'm paraphrasing a bit. He said, we liked your test, but we'd like to test you further. And could you get a week's leave of absence to come to Los Angeles to do that? And the theater company was nice enough to let me do that. So I left the show for a week to fly to LA, got to see my father and my mother again. That was great after, a year and a half or more. And that was when I first met Bob Wise. And I don't remember what he said. He was quiet, very nice, lovely gentleman. And I did the test. I met them Monday or Tuesday. I did the test on the Thursday. The test was directed by Jerry. And I tested with a really wonderful girl. Her name was Barbara Luna. And I think she was a hot contender for the role of Anita. She was really very good. And I just remember how she had this wonderful confidence, something I didn't have. So I noticed it in her. Yeah. But so did the test on a Thursday, flew back to London on Sunday, and was back in the show again on Monday playing Riff. So again, it was just a
was
great,
quick. It was
thrilling kind of week. But it was always so great to get back on stage again. There's something so beautiful about that.
Did you feel the pressure? Okay, it's over with. Now I could concentrate on being Riff on stage now.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
you said Bob Wise, and please correct me if any of my information is wrong. Don't worry about me if I pronounce anything wrong. No. Bob Wise, did he edit Orson Welles' Citizen Kane? Did he do the editing?
Yes, he was the editor, and he was 26 or something like that when he did it. He was the editor on Citizen Kane. I mean, wow, how about that?
That's a huge one.
And Bob's editing on West Side Story is beautiful. It's so good.
Because I read somewhere about, Elvis was eager to play the role. They say he was eager, but then I guess the Colonel, his manager, Tom Parker, didn't want Elvis looking the knife carrying and dying, ended up dying in the street. And if he took the role of Tony, who knows where it would have went to, because we talk about the character Riff, and I was doing some homework that Russ Tamland, the co-star in the film, he was a dancer. He was known for his, acrobatics, moves, and all that stuff. He played Tom Thumb, but he also taught Elvis his dance move for Jailhouse Rock, how to get the knees going on. I just read that somewhere, which is pretty wild.
I don't know about that.
You didn't know that? Yeah, he did. He taught him how to get the moves. Elvis was good, but then he taught Elvis one-on-one how to get the moves moving really good. And
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna. Russ is a friend. I kind of question that story, because I've seen that number, and it's Elvis really doing his thing.
Yeah. It is.
I don't think anybody taught him anything there.
Okay. So then I'm going to take your word. Okay. I got to take your word on it, because I read all this stuff, and that's why I have you here, and I want to know. But now on the show, who played Anita was it was on the Broadway show? Maybe not the London. The actress who played who was the actress who played the character Anita?
It was Chita Rivera. She also did it in London.
She did it in London too. Okay, I didn't know
she's a Chita. I mean, come on, she was
big.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you what. In London, Chita, she was the toast of the town. They just went crazy over Chita, as they should have. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she was phenomenal.
Beautiful, the longest legs. I mean, the dancing you'd seen on the screen. It's just what a dancer. All the pictures I remember as a kid watching her. A lot of fun stories. Now in the show itself, there's always drama behind the scenes and all that stuff. Because it would have been kind of weird if Brando was too old to play Tony, of course, but then there's rumors that he wanted to play.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
See, it's almost I was there. I'm almost like telling you, which would have been an odd thing, because at the time that's when Rita had the crazy relationship with Brando on and off, which is she talks about in her documentary. So there's all these crazy stories of Warren Beatty, all these people. But now, is it true? Now you had the actor Natalie Wood, who took the lead, Maria, and then you had playing Tony was Richard Beymer. Is that how I pronounce it?
Richard Beymer, yes.
Beymer. And did they not get along? What is the story with that?
Well, I don't know it firsthand. It was a rumor for me as well. But the story, as I understand it, was that Natalie wanted either her husband or Warren Beatty to play that role.
It was Robert Wagner at the time, right?
Yeah. And I think she even played sick for a couple of days, something like that. And Natalie was only 23 at the time, but she was an experienced professional, so gifted, she's so terrific. And she's such a lovely person. But that didn't happen. She
didn't get her way. Natalie, you're not getting
it continued to be Richard Beymer, of course.
Yeah.
The story that I heard was that because one of the most difficult roles in the theater and on film in West Side Story is Tony, I think. One of the best roles is Anita. In fact, Anita is the best role in both theater and film. So Tony, anybody who's playing Tony is going to be doing most of his scenes opposite the girl who plays Maria, in this case, Natalie, you know. And my understanding was that Natalie didn't speak to him. Wow. And so here was Richard Beymer, a young, wonderful, serious actor, and he was working with an actress who didn't speak to him. But I've thought different. And by the way, he used to go to the same gym as me. And one time we met at the gym, we started talking about this. And he was very, very gracious, and he's such a nice guy. He said, well, you know, I could have said something to her. I just didn't think of it and so on. But he told me that what he was doing, because he was getting no help at all, because Natalie wasn't speaking to him. I hate to say this about her, but evidently that was true. And he was calling Sandy Meisner, who was a drama coach. He was calling Sandy Meisner on the phone to get help. And Bob, you know, I'm about to say something about Bob Wise, but before I do, the thing about the movie West Side Story, everything was rehearsed thoroughly before anything was filmed. So all the scenes, all the songs, all the dance numbers, we'd done it. We knew what we were supposed to do in front of the camera. Because I'm about to say something else, but Bob Wise, as a director, said little or nothing to anybody. So, and I, you know, when I remember we were rehearsing the drugstore scene. The schedule had changed, and we were going to. And I'm telling you, this is an important scene. I remember we started rehearsing it and working on it. And somewhere during the break, I was thinking about me and what I was supposed to do. And I went up to Bob and I said, you know, and this I think is pretty weird. I said, you know, I think I could be doing more. And he said, well, yes, you could. But what? You know, he didn't say. And Rita will say that about, but it's not fair to say these kinds of things about Bob without first recognizing what an incredible filmmaker he was and what a lovely man he was. You have to balance things to be fair in what you say. But so I imagined he probably didn't say anything to Natalie and Richard either. So Richard I've always thought, he's working alone. He's not getting help from anybody.
It's tough.
So
that's tough.
And how about that? And that's why he was calling Sandy Meisner. But Richard, because he's such a lovely guy, years later he thought, well, I could have said something. And listen, if Natalie was around now, I'm sure she would be the first one to say, well, that was really silly of me. I don't know why I did that. You know, she would say something like that too, because after the fact, you recognize your own mistakes, so to speak. You know, so to be fair to everybody, but that was the circumstance, and Richard was getting. And by the way, Richard's first day in front of a camera was the first day after Jerry was gone.
Wow.
That was why there was a change in the shooting schedule.
That's right. Jerry was gone.
So Richard, Bob Wise didn't help him really. Natalie wasn't speaking to him, and he never had the benefit of Jerry. So he really was working alone. That's how my view of it, you know, and how hard must that have been?
It's so hard. I mean, watching the film, and you watch the chemistry with Richard, just all the cast, everybody, you would never sense anything. Like sometimes you could sense a little bit when you watch something. Oh, I knew you could see they're a little off, but Richard did great poker face. He held it together. That shows what a brilliant actor, because he didn't let his emotions take.
He is a wonderful actor. Listen, Richard had done a lot. He'd already been in what was the Jennifer Jones Montgomery.
Yes.
And Diary of Anne Frank. He was an experienced.
Diary of Anne Frank. That's right.
Yes. And he went on to do more after the thing that changed his life is he really was more interested in being a filmmaker himself as opposed to be an actor.
Went on to Twin Peaks later on.
Yeah, right. But I mean, once in a while, when if I hear anybody say anything that's not in favor of Richard, I'm compelled to tell them this story so they'll have a better understanding of what he was dealing with.
What he was going through.
Yeah. But look how he dealt with it. He's so beautiful in this film. The last scene with Natalie is, I mean, it's just so touching, so touching. Yeah.
You just took the words out of my mouth. I was about to say those words. It really is so touching. And even as a little boy watching that, it touched me. You know, we started the interview in the beginning as you as a kid seeing these movies and getting lost. West Side Story was that from myself. It was one of those things where you get lost, especially growing up in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in Brooklyn, which you guys filmed this in New York, correct? It was filmed in New York?
Yeah, well, the prologue was filmed in New York, just the prologue.
Okay.
It was at 68th in Amsterdam. All those buildings were vacant, and after we finished filming, all that stuff came down. And there was a second location, 2nd Avenue and 110th Street. That's the playground that we used. And that playground was replicated for the film as well. But so there were those two locations, 68th in Amsterdam and 110th and 2nd.
Wow.
I think that school ground is still there.
It's still there, huh?
Yeah.
I'm gonna, when I go back to New York, I'm gonna have to visit that and vlog that. That's great. I love that. Yeah. Was it in the summertime when you filmed that? Was it 108 degrees? Was it crazy hot when you did that?
I guess it was, but none of that ever bothered me, so I never thought about it.
Never thought about it.
No, yeah.
What about the story with your pants getting ripped? You had two.
Well, when we were shooting the dance at the gym, because in those days there was no such thing for dance as stretch fabric, you know. And by the way, that suit, Irene Sheriff was the costume designer for West Side Story. She did a lot of great things. Wow. I found out that the material for the suit that I wore, I had two suits, you know, in case something happened one, there was another one. And the fabric was called shark skin. That was the name of the material. I mean, just coincidentally. So we're doing the dance at the gym and the pants split. So it's okay, there's another pair. I put those on, and in fact, those split. So I had to put on a pair of black tights under that so that you wouldn't see skin while we were moving, and it worked, you know. And then eventually, I guess things got repaired. But my pants did split twice during the dance because that material didn't give. Yeah.
I want to know somewhere there has the costumes that you wore. They have to be saved. Somebody has them somewhere. They just did something so iconic. They had to keep it. I mean, back then, the 50s and 60s, things were so crazy. Things being said and everything like this. Even the words, scripts would change from the original script from the Broadway and London production to the theater, right? Did they have to change the scripts or the little key words and all that?
Well, the man who did the screenplay for the film of West Side Story, Ernest Lehman, I think that's right. One of the great writers. He was funny. I met him a little while later. He was very funny guy, but there were changes made, but they were good changes. Yeah, and one of the most important changes that they made was because after the Rumble, Officer Krupke in the film version is done after the Rumble. So the two people are dead, and these guys are playing around. So that was okay in the theater, but they didn't want that in the film, and they changed it. So Officer Krupke takes place before the Rumble, and after the Rumble comes Cool. They had been actually in different places in the theater, and they were in different places in the film, and it was so correct. It really worked, you know. I mean,
they moved it, yeah. Well, now on the soundtrack behind me, you're on that sound. Are you on that soundtrack right here on this vinyl album?
I think we're in the America number. I think so, because we were all in the studio together. But yes, I'm somewhere on that.
That's so cool. So, look at this. This is, I interview musicians and all this stuff, and I had a gentleman on my show, big in the business and a guitar player, and he's like, how he was so blown away how I got you, and I can't believe it. And he goes, this was the first thing that got him into playing music. And he's one of those virtuoso guitar players named Steve Vai. And this album, the show, it just made him everything. And the influence that you had, this production, just being a part of this history, creating who you created, it's a beautiful thing, George. You know.
Well, I'll tell you the great when I see that album, I think of Leonard Bernstein. You know, when doing the show in London, of course, before you open, the orchestra has to rehearse as well, and I remember noticing how much those musicians loved playing this score because it was different to anything else they'd ever had to do.
It really was.
Yeah. And it was a challenge as well. So, but it's Leonard Bernstein.
It's so good. Yeah. I mean, you think about the music on this, it's Broadway, it's theater, but then it almost has that rock and roll vibe to it too. It's everything, you know what I mean? It's really, it crosses every spectrum, this soundtrack.
And it's just so rich in feeling, you know, it's just, wow. You can't listen to it and not feel something.
That was the wonderful George Chakiris. If you want to see more of that interview, click on the box right here. There's a lot more. And if you want to see an unedited, uncut, join us on Patreon for an all-access VIP Backstage Pass where you get the full episodes. Until then, everybody, we'll see you later. We love you. Mwah!